this Unit 1, last topic. Shall we do that, or we'll go to second unit? Yes. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Shall we start Unit 2? Hello.
Yes, sir. You can finish off that first unit topic, sir, if it takes
Yeah. Okay.
less time.
Right. What is the last topic of this first unit? Expansion of the empire. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Right. So here, who is empire? Who is known as empire? Hello. Who is the empire here? Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please mute.
Sorry.
Yeah, please mute your device. Somebody is talking in Telugu. Yeah, fine. So here we'll come back to our topic, expansion of the empire. Who is the empire here? Who colonized India?
Britain, sir. Britain.
Yeah, Britishers. So they had come as traders and established the East India Company, and how they expanded their power and how they colonized India and other parts of the world. Can anyone of you read the first paragraph? Hello? 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 Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is audible.
Yeah, anyone of you read first paragraph of this expansion of the empire?
So please say the page number, please.
You go to last topic for this unit, page number 51. Is it in your book? Which is the page number? Okay, so here the worldwide expansion of the British Empire took place at an unprecedented pace in the 19th century. But the conquering of different parts of the world or colonization by Britain began much earlier, from about 1600. The first British colony was established in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, although in 1583 a settlement at Newfoundland existed. So way back 2 centuries, how the British Empire has been colonizing different parts of the world. There you see the landmark of 1600, 1607 in Virginia, and 1583 in Newfoundland. Like that, we'll see that how the expansion of the entire empire continued to till 20th century and First World War, and here you see that how Portuguese and Spaniards had begun the process of conquest and colonization much earlier than the British. They were never as successful as the latter. The first major acquisitions in the process of this expansion were North America and India. After this, in the 7th and 17th and 18th centuries, some subsidiary settlements in Africa were consolidated. Here you see that how India too had that kind of touch of the colonizer in 18th century, and you can see that the colonization by the British Empire a blot in our Indian history. The 19th century witnessed the main expansion of the empire as the British obtained many former French possessions in the West Indies. The American Revolution of 1776 resulted in the loss of that colony, but compensation came in further expansions elsewhere. The people of England began to immigrate to Australia in large numbers, establishing a colony there. The African territory was also consolidated. During this period in Asia, the work of expansion included the acquisition of Singapore 1824, Hong Kong 1841, and Burma 1886, and the South Pacific. Above all, the settlement of New Zealand 1840. So here you can see the landmark of the British empires had started in 1600, and then latter 17th and 18th century, and then 19th century. So each and every uh, part of the world has been expanded by the British Empire. When you look at all these, then the way how growth of empire in the 16th century, they were not keen for territorial expansion. Instead, their main interest was commerce. Compared to Portugal and Spain, England was a poor country. So here you look at that they want power to rule the countries, as well as they want to trade, commerce, and here they want to have that kind of business for their development. So like that, here you can see how the expansion of the empire has been passing through the centuries to colonize the countries for their business, and then you can see that the way how they developed the colonized countries for their existential of power politics. So here you can see the way how 17th century, and then if you'll come to the other parts of the world, and then in the 19th century, that the growth of the empire has been with this kind of whatever is power politics. And in the 19th and 20th centuries, the empire made Britain one of the richest and most powerful nations in the world. So this is what here each and every part of the world has been colonized by the British Empire. So they made themselves powerful to emerge as a powerful nations in the world. So like that, here we have seen that the way how British Empire began by an aim of exploration, but soon changed its policies to one of colonization. So this is what the way how they became as traders, and then they made themselves as rulers of that whatever the countries were colonized by them. So when you look at all these, then the British Empire has been trying to uproot the indigenous people's culture, tradition, and whatever the other sources of their livelihood. So a variety of people, even pirates, convicts, and refugees, work together with traders, soldiers, explorers, financial speculators, and missionaries to create the British Empire, which extended in such a way that the sun never set over it. So this is what the way how our India was colonized, and then how our Indians became the slaves, and they made to survive their livelihood, and they served the purpose of the British Empire in the East India Company. So here the way how the British Empire has been colonizing the countries to have their power politics. One of the best examples of private initiative was the East India Company, which relinquished its power to the British government when it could no longer manage the work of administration. These private individuals and companies had to frequently face the reluctance of the government to encourage them into their ventures. Since after a time, the government had to inevitably take over the maintenance of these new acquisitions. So here, as we all know that in Gujarat, Surat, the way how they started their East India Company, and then how they spread their whatever the power politics to colonize the entire India. Whatever we had the during colonial time, the 540 dynasties, each and every dynasty had that kind of power politics of their own, and then they colonized by the British Empire in the name of the development, like that. Here the way how British Empire had that kind of power politics too establish their trade, their whatever the business, and then they rooted the culture tradition of our indigenous people, and they introduce the English for their whatever the trade and business oriented communications. So like that we have seen that East India Company's power politics during the colonial time, and how they had tried to introduce the English in 1832, and then how they introduced the Christian missionaries in our Indian education system. So when you look at that kind of whatever the
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
Sorry for disturbing. I was not there in the initial part. Can you please tell what are you teaching, sir?
Expansion of the empire.
Page number, sir, like which unit or which chapter?
The last topic of the first unit, madam.
Sir, we cannot find that the topic in the previous year, sir.
Pre-affiliation, sir.
No. After that, one expansion of the empire is there or not?
No, it's not there, sir.
Not this, sir.
Yes, sir.
Second year, sir.
Has,
The
sir.
last topic in first unit, sir.
This is the first unit, last topic.
First unit.
It's
See
there in
here.
the topic,
See,
but not covered.
Yeah, please. Is this topic is there or not?
New
No.
printed instruction of the
Yes, sir.
last
Is there,
pages.
sir?
No, it is not there, sir. In paper 4, in
No,
paper
see, I
4,
asked,
unit
see
1.
here, I see, whatever I have the material, no, I thought that this topic is, part of the unit 1. That's what I asked you to read the first, paragraph of the expansion of the empire. Now, you are saying
No,
that,
sir, we
huh?
cannot find expansion of the empire in the book. If the last topic is pre-Raphaelites.
Okay. So in the beginning, one of the students told that, it is there, no?
No, sir,
Okay,
no,
fine.
it's not there.
So
We
like
have
that.
been
No.
trying to find it. There in the index, slide.
Okay,
Not
it's okay. Okay, that's what I thought of starting the unit 2. Okay, fine. It's okay. Now we'll come to unit 2. What is that? Unit 2. What are the topics you have? You just let me know, so that there should not be any kind of mismatch.
Sir,
Sir,
in
in
what
what
topic is there, sir?
Okay. Now see here. We'll start today. P.B. Shelley and Keats poetry. Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So here,
Yes.
unit 2 carries here poetry. What is poetry? Tell me. What is poetry? We had
a collection of poems, sir.
Description of unique things, description of anything with you, comparing unique
of lyrics, sir.
features.
Okay. So fine. Here, no. Yeah. So here we have the romantic poetry. What is romantic poetry? Tell me. Yes. Any one of you, please.
Romanticism during the time, sir.
Yeah. Yes, please.
And it can be love towards the nature, love towards the beauty.
Kind
of
unconventional.
Yeah.
So
So here, yeah.
written to describe the love towards the opposite.
Okay, fine. So here you see that romantic age is known as age of reason,
Or
freedom of
romantic
expression, individuality, and they always tries to look at the nature as the God, and they are the believers of pantheism. God teaches us through nature. So we will start today PB Shelley's To a Skylark. So here, one of the romantic poets, PB Shelley, has that kind of whatever the uh, poetry with this kind of the beauty of the nature and to represent its into his poetry. So he is one of the influential leaders of the romantic movement, and he is known as a revolutionary poet. He wrote a pamphlet, Necessity of Atheism, in 1832. Because of that, he was expelled from the university. So when you look at the way how he is quite against to the theism, he never and ever believes that kind of God and any kind of spirituality. As and when he is an Oxford University student, and then studied in Eton College and Oxford, because of that influence of the education, he wrote Necessity of Atheism, a pamphlet called. So he is known as a revolutionary poet, and his poetry is making sense of that whatever he had realized about the God, as well as the spirituality and that kind of power in the beauty of the nature. So if you look at Ode to Skylark and Ode to West Wind, and here whatever the other poems of PB Shelley, there you can understand how he has been with this kind of background of his own. He has that kind of uniqueness, a subtle thought and subtle expression, and he took poetry as a vehicle for his expression of thought-provoking ideas. So here, Shelley's attitude to nature was distinct and very different from that of other romantic poets. So here he differs with the other romantic poets of his age because of his whatever the characteristic features of the poetic form, as well as the creative imagination and prophetic mission. So there you can see that how his contribution to poetry as well as the romantic age shows that his poetry has that kind of imagination, spontaneity, and music. So when you look at his whatever the poems here, first poem is to a skylark, or to a skylark. So here you can see that the poem with this kind of characteristic features of imagination and creativity. Here the skylark is Shelley's most effective natural metaphor for pure poetic expression. It is a bird of the day, ever present but invisible in the blue expanse of the sky. It inspires Shelley to feel a frenzied and ecstatic elation that has no awareness of pain. The music emanating from the bird is free of all human inaccuracy and intricacy. Listening to this song, the poet feels free of the burden of negatives. So here, when you look at the criticism on the romantic poets, that they are escapists. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
sir. We are clear,
So
sir.
here, there was a criticism on romantic poets that they are escapists. Why they are escapists? Because they want to go away from the sordid realms of their life into the dream and coming back to the reality. Because if their life is painful and they want to go away from that kind of painful life into the dream, it is not that the escape, it is going into the dream and coming back to the reality. So critics said that they are escapists from the reality, But here they are into that kind of elevation of imagination, and having that kind of pleasure of writing the poetry, and they will come back to the reality. So they are not escapists, but here they had a criticism by the critics that they are the escapists. So here the skylark and its song present to the poet a particular line of thought. So this is what here how he has seen that mellifluous voice of the cuckoo bird in Ode to Nightingale by John Keats, and here Ode to Skylark of P.B. Shelley have been representing that kind of whatever their attachment with the beauty of the nature, and they want to go away from that kind of reality into the dream. So the poem has 25 line stanzas, and rhythm scheme is uniform throughout A B A B B. The first four lines are in trimeter, that is, they have three stressed syllables, while the fifth is longer and has six stressed syllable, that is a hexameter. Such a long line can also be called an Alexandrine. So here, as we know that the poetry is making sense of the figures of speech, figures of sound, figures of comparison, figures of language, and here we have the rhyme scheme. So when you look at sonnet, on is having arrived at the age of 23 by John Milton, and there you see that how the poet genius and the creativity is making sense of that poetic genius. So like that here we have the rhyme scheme of AB, and each and every a line of that, where when you look at this poem is considered to be one of the best poems of Shelley. So here he had contributed many poems, but here this one is a special poem, and it creates that kind of harmonious madness or poetic inspiration. The poem begins with the poet praising the skylark, calling it a spirit. So here when you look at a sky, and there you will see that clouds look like a bird, and here the poet has seen that bird is an inspiration, is a spirit, and here it makes sense of that kind of whatever the optimism into its whatever the visibility of its structure in the sky. So ode to skylark, hail to thee, bleathy spirit, bird thou never wert, that from heaven or near it pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. The skylark song originates from a pure state of being where there is a union with the heaven through nature. So here he has been trying to look at that the skylark, a bird, is a spirit, and it is making sense of that kind of heaven through nature. The bird song seems to be so untainted that the poet thinks it cannot emanate from a mere bird. The music it spreads is like music from heaven. So what he is trying to emphasize that the song of the bird is not from the skylark, it is from the heaven. The poet thus calls it breathy spirit because its songs are spontaneous, as he acknowledges in the description profuse strains of unpremeditated art. So here the art created by human beings different from the art of the nature. So here it shows that uncorrupted spirit of the beauty of the nature, and it is from that kind of shows that kind of whatever the fresh and mellifluous and that sweetness into its song. So here the poet has been trying to highlight like a cloud of fire, it continues to sing with the same fervor. So in his imagination he says that higher still and higher from the earth thou springest, like a cloud of fire, the blue deep thou wingest, and singing still dost soar, and soaring ever signest. So here the poet says that it is overwhelming joy of the song of the skylark, the bird which is with this kind of overwhelming joy, unbodied joy, and emphasizing its existence as a spirit. So here it is with the optimism when he has that kind of spirit of the beauty of the nature. And then he looked at the bird in the sky lark, that a spirit which is with the overwhelming joy, and then it is too high, and it never and ever compromises with anything. It has its own way to have that kind of whatever the pleasurable song. So here the poet says, in the golden lightning of the sunken sun, over which clouds are brightening, thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just began. So here he says that the way how it has that kind of uniqueness of the bird, and comparisons are drawn from nature to highlight its presence. So this is the way to see that how a romantic poetry is making sense of the nature, and which is the spirit of their optimism, and the way how they looked at the nature as the representation of the god. And here the poet has been trying to say that skylark is with the overwhelming joy, and is it it is from the heaven, and it is making sense of that kind of mellifluous voice, and never and ever compromises with anything. So in the following lines he says that whatever the the pale purple even melts around thy flight like a star of heaven in the broad daylight. Thou art unseen, but yet I hear thy still delights. Keen as are the arrows of that silver spear, whose intense lamp narrows in the white dawn clear, until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. So here you will see the way how the poetic genius and the creativity had the inspire from that kind of bird, and it is the source of the heaven, and it is making sense of that kind of whatever the beauty of the nature. And here he had tried to say that the uniqueness and the overwhelming joy. And the poet here tries to compare the bird with objects that are familiar to him, so as to grasp the inexpressible and indescribable essence of what he is trying to verbalize. So this is what the way how he is lacking that kind of expression, because he has that kind of inability and indescribable inexpressible stand of his own. So here the poet is helplessly trying to highlight that the beauty of the nature, and the skylark, and the spirit, and it is from the heaven. And he says that he does not have any kind of that ability to express about that kind of skylarks, and it's whatever the overwhelming joy. So here when you look at that the way how the poet had this kind of whatever the inabilities, inexpressible and indescribable whatever status of his mind, but he had tried to see that the skylark is making sense of the spirit of the heaven, and it is with the overwhelming joy, and it has that kind of power to generate the idea of the mellifluous voice, sweetness, and it is the spirit of that heaven. But he reminds his whatever the inability, inexpressible, indescribable, he cannot describe in his own words, because he lacks that kind of whatever the spirit of the bird. So here he had compared with the bird, and as in a poet, and whatever the differences between the bird and the poet. Like a poet hidden in the light of thought, singing hymns unbidden till the world is wrought. So here, when you look at the poet, with the hopes and fears, it heeded not. The bird is also compared to a maiden high in the palace tower, whose song sung for herself in agony floats below and delights all listeners. So no matter of its worries, it always tries to please others. Like a high-born maiden in a palace tower, soothing her love-laden soul in secret hour, with music sweet as love, which overflows her bower. So here, this is what the way how the poet, had tried to elevate that kind of, spirit of the skylark, and which always tries to please the listeners. So here we had, tried to compare with him as well as maiden, and then now he wants to, look at the objects of nature as the glow worm, which gives light without any expectations of return, or compared to the singing of the skylark, like a glow worm golden in a dell of dew, scattering unbeholden its aerial hue among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. So here, hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Is it
So
audible?
we can
Yeah.
try.
So here, no, the poet has been trying to compare that the spirit of the skylark with him, and with maiden, and with other objects, and here the poetic genius and the creativity of here PB Shelley shows that he wants to highlight the beauty of the nature with this optimism. And here skylark is similar, because it's sings for the pleasure of everyone who chances to hear the song, like a rose embowered in its own green leaves by warm winds, deflowered till the scent it gives makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. So here you look at the way how it is unconcerned to its existential reality. No matter of pain, it always tries to please other with its voice. So here the skylark, sprite or bird, the poet requests it to confide in him his sweetest thoughts, for he has never heard a song sung in such divine rapture. Teach us, sprite or bird, what sweet thoughts are thine? I have never heard praise of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture to divine. So here he appeals to that skylark. You can teach us. We never and ever taught by anybody else. There you can see that sweet thoughts are thine. I have never heard. The poet says that he, does not have any kind of the thought-provoking ideas, sweetness of the song, and nobody taught him. And he himself says that never heard praise of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture so divine. So here the speaker asked the bird to reveal its source of inspiration. So the way how he has been trying to say that his inability, inexpressible, indescribable, and he does not have any kind of thing to say about the beauty of the nature. But the poem here is on the skylark, the bird, which is the inspiration of that. And he wants to know, the bird had this kind of power and spirit and to please others. So here he asked the bird that where does it has come to the bird, the divine power. So here the way how he wants to show his helplessness in front of that skylark, to know about the source of the spirit and the happiness and that kind of uniqueness in its presence of the beauty of the nature. So the way how what objects are the fountains of thy happy strain, what fields or waves or mountains, what shapes of sky are playing, what love of thine own kind, what ignorance of pain. Here, the poet compares the human attitude towards life with birds' presumed stands. Human beings tend to base their happiness either on past memories or on hopes for the future. They have not learned to live in the present. So here we may have the source of our happiness, of our past memories, sweet memories, and hopes of future, but we never and ever try to live in the present. So here the way how he criticizes the human nature of the past as well as the future, and he wants to say that how we dismisses the present status of life of the human beings because of the past and the future. We look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. So here, when you are lingering into the past sweet memories and hope of the future, you may be into these confused status of your mind. You never and ever try to live in the presence. So here, when you look at the human beings failure into the past and the future, and they never and ever try to live in the presence. So here he appeals to the skylark, teach me of the gladness that thy brain must know. So here what he says, that skylark has that kind of power, spirit and happiness, and it is unconcerned to the world materials. So here the way how he has been comparing the human beings and other objects and the bird, when you look at all these, how he shows that kind of inability, inexpressible, in describable. He cannot describe that happiness of the bird, and he appeals with the bird that to teach us the gladness and thy brain must know. So you have the source of the spirit of that heaven, and you never and ever compromise with past and future, and you live in the presence. We lack it, so please teach us to know that kind of whatever the gladness and whatever so that we will try to learn from you, so that he could communicate with his audience in an unforgettable manner. So he says that the way how he wants to communicate with his audience into his poetic genius and creativity. Such harmonious madness from my lips would flow. The world should listen then as I am listening now. So here, as a poet, he can, have the taste of that ambrosia, overwhelming joy, and that kind of spirit of the bird. And similarly, he wants to spread through his lips, through his writings, through his whatever the poetic genius and the creativity, whatever he had from that word to the world. So this is what here he had tried to see the way to understand how this poetic genius and creativity generates the idea of that whatever the imagination and the poetic genius and creativity with the inspiration of the beauty of the nature. So when you look at ode to skylark, is a spirit from the heaven, and it is unconcerned to the worldly or material benefits of the our human beings. So when you look at that, how he has the strong willpower to have that kind of spirit from the bird, and to spread the idea of the happiness which never and ever compromises with the sweet memories of the past and hope of the future, to live in the presence, to have that kind of attachment with the present, whatever is the life with them. So like that here, PB Shelley had tried to look at the skylark, and then he has been trying to bring all these whatever is aspects of hope of survival, and is with his optimism that poetic genius and creativity as a vehicle to express the undescribable, unexplorable, and whatever the inexperienced status of mind of the human being. So here when you look at PB Shelley's concerns of the necessity of atheism, and the spirit of the nature, as well as the overwhelming joy of the skylark, shows that how he wants to show the right way to human beings to live in the presence, rather than with the past sweet memories or hope for the future. So this is the way how one can understand PB Shelley's poetry with this kind of aspects of the hope of survival and optimism. So with this I conclude the poem. Now we'll move to another poem, Ode to West Wind. Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir,
we
it
are
is
audible.
audible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you
sir.
see, yeah, you have seen PB Shelley's, a revolutionary idea of the poetry, and the way how he had that kind of inspiration of the nature, and then he with his optimism he wants to raise the human beings towards the hope of survival in the presence rather than in the past and the future, and to to have that kind of overwhelming joy of the spirit of the skylark, and which is making sense of the heaven. And there the bird never and ever compromises with anything. It is unlike the human beings material benefits, and it always regenerates the idea of optimism to live in the presence rather than in the past and the future. Is it okay?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
It's okay,
Yeah.
sir.
Now we'll come to Ode to the West Wind. So here you have seen that the way how this ode is in our skylark, as well as in our West Wind. Will see that how PB Shelley had that kind of poetic genius and creativity in its expression. Okay, like we'll come to Ode to the West Wind. Okay, can anyone of you read this Ode to the West Wind? So here, PB Shelley had a lot of problems in his life, and he appeals to the skylark and ode to the west wind. He here to have that kind of spirit and overwhelming joy and uncompromised nature of his life with whatever the challenges and failures in his life. So here in Ode to the West Wind, we'll see that the way how PB Shelley had tried to constitute the idea of the optimism and the revolutionary nature in this poem. So we'll start the poem of the first stanza. Here he appeals to the old or to the west wind. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. So here in the first stanza, the poet shows that is whatever the attachment with the west wind, and it is a wild west wind, and he compares that west wind as an enchanter. And if there will be a wild west wind, all the leaves will fly to where? To graveyard. And if you look at a ghost will come there, you will see the whatever the dead bodies will fly away from the ghost. So like that, here you see the way how west wind has been compared as a ghost and enchanter. So when you look at the way how he had tried to compare that the west wind is too powerful. If it comes, everything will be smashed, everything will be fly away from its presence. So here, if even a ghost will be there, definitely it will run away because of an enchanter. So here, when you look at the power of the west wind is uncomparable, unmatched, and it shows that kind of presence with dynamic nature. And here you will see that power as a force to reckon with, and its role as a destroyer and preserver. In the following lines you see, oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of my life. So what he says, negation of the negation. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. And he appeals to the west wind that, in his life, he fell, upon the thorns of his life, and he appeals to the west wind. When you lift the wave, leaf and cloud, why don't you lift me? Because I fell upon the, thorns of my life. So he, himself says that his helplessness in his life, he does not have any kind of hope of survival, and everything is lost in his life. And he, looked at the west wind with the power and the spirit which is present everywhere, and it lifts, dead leaves and waves and cloud, whatnot, everything. And here he says that you are the enchanter. If you are there, the ghost will fly away. And if you are there, you are a charioteer. You will take everything. So in the following line, you will see, if I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud, to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power, and share the impulse of thy strength. So here you can see that the way how the leaves of the trees, pestilence striken, yellow, black, and pestilence striken, no matter of any color leaf will be taken into your chariot. You will take, irrespective of the color of the leaves, are good or bad, no matter. You have the power, you have that kind of spirit. So he compares in the third stanza that if I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud, to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power, and share the impulse of thy strength. So he compares that like a dead leaf, I would have come with you. When you are an enchanter, or when you are a charioteer, when you are with this kind of spirit, so I will fly with thee, with you, I will fly with you to go away from this kind of painful life, because you can take anyone into your chariot to leave this world. So like that, here he shows his helplessness into that expression that he does not have anything, no one is there to lift him, and he fell upon the thorns of his life. And he compares with the dead leaves that he wants to fly with thee, with your power. So when you look at all these, then you see that poet consigns himself into the keeping of the wind in order to merge with the spirit of nature which the wind represents. So here he wants to be the part of the west wind, because he does not have any kind of hope or any kind of strength. So he says, make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. So here when he says with the west wind that why don't you make me a lyre, a musical instrument, no matter even if it is a forest, What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone. Sweet thou in sadness, be thou spirit, fires my spirit, be thou me, impetus one. So here he appeals to the west wind that you lift me as a wave, as a leaf, as a cloud, and you make me as your lyre, thy lyre, and I want to be with you. I want to fly, with you. So here the poet, wants to go away from the, painful life with the, powerful spirit of that west wind. So here he shows that the way to know how that west wind is the representation of that, uncomparable spirit of the nature. So here Shelley realization shows that the west wind carries away his dead thoughts. Will there be a rejuvenation of ideas, thoughts in both the individual and the natural world? So here he says in the following lines that drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. So here what he wants to say that, here the way how he appeals to the, west wind, that you can lift me as a wave, as a leaf, as a, you know cloud, and you can, take me into thee as a charioteer, and you can make me thy lyre, and you can, drive my dead thoughts to, regenerate, and to have the rebirth, and to have that kind of new birth. So when you look at all these, then we can understand that, PB Shelley's concerns to the nature. And here you will see the following lines: yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence strike and multitudes. O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed, thou winged seats where thy lie, cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth. So here, as I told you that you are a, enchanter, as well as you are a charioteer, and you will take yellow, black, pale, and hectic red, pestilence striken multitudes. O thou! Here that means the leaves of the, trees are all into multiple colors. No matter, you will take them in that chariot, and you will see that the way how they will go to the, graveyard, and they will like corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth. So here you can see that the, dead bodies in the graveyard, similarly the seeds in the, earth. So here they are looking for the rebirth, to regenerate that whatever the source of the previous. So here west wind, shows that multiple aspects of, the power or spirit of the nature, and he has been trying to say that the way how, west wind as not only a spirit, it is an enchanter and a charioteer, and it can, take anything with its spirit. So here the poet shows that the way how, this west wind is making sense of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, vaulted with all the congregated might. So here the way how he emphasizes force of renewal by the phrase congregated might. So it shows that the way how, west wind has that kind of power to regenerate. It will, kill anything, and it will take to the graveyard, and it will regenerate it. So here the poet then proceeds to the ocean, where he finds old palaces and towers covered with moss and flowers, depicting degeneration. The might of the wind is anticipated by the sapless foliage which grow gray with fear. So when you look at the way how each and every stanza with this kind of whatever the expression is close to the west wind's presence, and that way how it has that kind of spirit of its presence everywhere. And here in this stanza, the sea blooms the goosey woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice, and suddenly grow grey with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves. So here, if you look at the west wind's presence, everywhere, it will always with this, with that kind of power to shake anything, no matter of any object of the the place. So here, when you look at the west wind is making sense of that degeneration. So when you look at all these aspects of this ode to the west wind, the way how the poet has been trying to express the spirit power of the west wind, that it can destroy and preserve. Oh, wild west wind, you are the destroyer and preserver. So when you look at the way to show that is unextinguished earth, the condition of being dormant is reinforced by the phrase unawakened earth, scatter as from an unextinguished earth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. Be thou my lips, be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. Oh wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind. Look at the way how in Ode to Skylark and Ode to West Wind are all with this kind of similar tone of optimism, and to have the spirit of the that nature which always with the sky, with that kind of happiness and freshness. And here he appeals to the west wind that his helplessness made him to become with that kind of power and spirit, and to have his words among the mankind, to awake them, and to have that kind of joy of their life. So here he always tries to say that the way to have the optimism in one's life, no matter of hard knocks, failures, and any kind of thing which is with this kind of pessimism. And here he had tried to uplift the human beings through his words. And in this poem, that wild west wind always with this kind of regeneration. So it is a destroyer and preserver, and it can be with this kind of spirit of rebirth. So he says, if winter comes, can spring be far behind. So like that, here we have that kind of notion of the punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. So here into this kind of status of mind, the poem demonstrates how the process of regeneration can only take place in the wake of distraction. So here we have seen that the way how the poem is making sense of degeneration and regeneration, and how the poet had the spirit of this optimism, to have that kind of whatever the power of the wind, and how it will uplift the human beings like a wave, leaf, and cloud. And here the poet with that kind of optimism shows the power and spirit of the west wind. Here the beauty of the nature is not only to please ourselves, to have the spirit and power to face the challenges of our human life. So here the poem is with this kind of conclusion that if winter comes, can spring be far behind. Don't think that the dark will remain forever. You can see the light after the dark. So if winter comes, can spring be far behind. Like that, here the poet shows the way to know the destroy of the west wind, and it preserves, it regenerates, it gives new birth. And then here he appeals to the west wind that to have that kind of spirit and power of is whatever the literary contribution with is whatever the uniqueness and the way to have the optimism in his poetic genius and creativity towards the society, to uplift them from pessimism to the optimism. Like that, these two poems shows that the necessity of atheism, how it is relevant to the poetic genius and creativity of P.B. Shelley. He never and ever compromises with anything, but he had the touch of the power and spirit of the nature to uplift himself from that kind of sordid realms of his life into the dream and coming back to the reality. So when you look at that kind of poetic genius and creativity into his poetry with this kind of optimism. So with this I conclude these two poems, and then we'll move to the another poem by John Keats, Ode to Nightingale. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to follow
Yes,
my
sir.
are you able to follow my lecture?
Hello,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
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 So here
Yes,
we
sir.
have seen Ode to West Wind and Ode to Skylark. Both these poems are all into this kind of optimism, and the poet always appeals to the spirit and power of the nature, that it has that kind of uh, overwhelming joy, happiness, or that could be any kind of uncompromised power, to have the optimism among the people, to say that how the romantic age is with this kind of inspiration of the nature. So the poet had tried to fill the gap between the past and the future, to have the presence, to have that kind of singleness of thought, of whatever our human concerns of our living. So here we may have that kind of pessimism, helplessness, but we should not compromise with this kind of challenges of our life, challenges or failures of our life. Here PB Shelley had tried to uplift the human beings, and he appealed to the west wind, that similarly skylark, that to lift as a wave, as a leaf, as a cloud. And he compared the west wind with enchanter, and the way charioteer. And here the presence of the enchanter shows that kind of power to flee away from the enchanter. The ghost will fly away. So like that, here you see the multiple striken leaves will be charioted towards the graveyard. So like that, here the dread thoughts should driven by the spirit of the west wind. So he always tries to have the optimism in his poetry, and he took as a vehicle to spread the his ideas, revolutionary ideas, into his poetic genius and creativity. Are you able to understand this? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now we'll
Yes,
move to
sir.
now we'll move to Ode to Nightingale by John Keats. Can any one of you read Ode to Nightingale?
Rabindranath.
No, not Rabindranath Tagore, no. In which poem, which paper are you in? Hello?
John Keats.
Ah, see here we have paper literature of the 19th century, no?
Ode to a Nightingale.
Ode to Nightingale. So we have seen so far Ode to Skylark, Ode to West Wind. Now we'll come to Ode to Nightingale. Here, the poet John Keats. Yes, yes. Hello. Yeah. Hello.
So it was written in May.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Done.
Now we'll see this Ode to Nightingale. So look at the way how John Keats had this kind of whatever the inspiration by whatever is life with the problems and painful and pessimism, and there you can understand how he had the touch of the mellifluous voice of the cuckoo bird through the sensuousness and picturesqueness when he had that kind of sleep, and then he had the touch of the sensuousness with the mellifluous voice of the bird nightingale, and that cuckoo bird made him to rise from the sleep and to write a poem. So here, the way how the 19th century was largely a renaissance of the poetry of nature. Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, and others were all nature poets, though distinct from each other in his approach to nature. So here we have seen Wordsworth, P.B. Shelley, now John Keats. His philosophy of life to these poets. There you can see how they have that kind of whatever the closeness with the nature. Keats' odes give the reader an abundance of this sensuousness. Ode to Nightingale brings out the contrast between eternal glories of nature and the painful realities of life. As I told you that the way how the poets of the romantic age are with this kind of stand of realities as well as their life, and then they are the victim to the conflict between these two themes. Here ode to Krishna and ode to Nightingale are with this kind of background, and we'll see that the way how ode to Nightingale brings that kind of whatever the optimism, and how John Keats had the touch of all these aspects into his poetic genius and creativity. So here, when you look at the way how picturesqueness and sensuousness in this poetry, now we'll see that the poem with the opening lines. Thou was not born for death, immortal bird. So here he says that it is an immortal bird. When you look at the beginning, whatever the poem, with my heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my senses as though of hemlock. I had drunk or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed, and lethe words had sunk. It is not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melody's plot of beechen green and shadows numberless signest of summer in full-throated ease. So look at here the opening lines of the Nightingale, that when he woke up in the morning, all of a sudden he had listened to that mellifluous voice. He does not know which bird is that, and the mellifluous voice of the birds generated the idea of picturesqueness and sensuousness. And he says that his heart aches, drowsy numbness pains, and he senses though of hemlock I had drunk. So here it is nothing but an opium. And whenever he heard that mellifluous voice of the bird, and it has that kind of overwhelming joy. So here he says that the way how that bird has that kind of power, and he does not have any kind of envy of thy happiness a lot. He is into the painful life because he lost his brother and suffering from the tuberculosis. And then you can see the painful life of John Keats, and all of a sudden he listened to that cuckoo bird's mellifluous voice, and then he says that he does not have any kind of envious upon thy happiness. One side he is in a painful life, the other side the mellifluous voice of the bird shows happiness, and then he says that he does not have any kind of enviousness of that bird's happiness. And here the poet in contrast can only think of the world of men as full of sorrow. So he says that the world is filled with sorrows, and there is no any kind of optimism. Only here you can see that the bird is singing a song with that kind of overwhelming joy, and it is with that kind of sensuous pleasure. So now he says, no more than ever seems it rich to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain. While thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy, still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sword. So what he says, that the birds knows whatever the overwhelming joy is, evergreen, and it is concerned to the day or night, no matter. It has that kind of soul with that kind of happiness. And here anyone can listen to it. Even the widow Ruth can also listen to its voice. So here the way how the poet had drawn the references of emperor and clown. Even a joker or a king or a widow can listen to its mellifluous voice of the nightingale. So here, thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. He praises that it is an immortal. It is never and ever dies. It has that kind of spirit to generate the overwhelming joy. No hungry generation steed thee down, though the voice I hear this passing night was heard. In ancient days, by emperors and clown, perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad hurt of Ruth when sick from home. So here, Ruth is a widow, and here it is a source of Bible, and here he says, emperor or clown or no matter, anyone else can have that bird's voice they might have heard. So like that here, she stood in tears amid the aligned corn, the same that oft times hath charmed magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. So here you can see the poet immersed in the wonderful world that the nightingale belongs to, or the one he assumes the bird to inhabit. He finds that the bird has stopped singing. So here you can see that there is a break in its, whatever the mellifluous voice. So as you see that the way how mellifluous voice of the bird draws the attention of anyone, even a widow, a king, or a clown. And here the poet, and how he had that kind of imagination. And when it breaks, he says that cheated into imagination by the deceiving elf that the nightingale is, his thoughts keep oscillating between the world of imagination that of the nightingale. So here, as and when he had the sensuousness and picturesqueness in his mind with the imagination, and he took poetry as a vehicle to express his uniqueness, subtle thought in subtle expression. And if there is a break, he is wandering into that kind of imagination. And here, forlorn the very word is like a bell too tall me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. So here, the bird had successfully taken him to this land of imagination, and the real world, full of inescapable pain, had receded for the time being. So here you can see, was it a vision or a waking dream? Flood is that music. Do I wake or sleep? So he questions in the conclusion that the way how the break of the mellifluous voice made him to come back to the reality, and he went into the imagination of the dream and to elevate that whatever the resourcefulness of the imagination, to say that mellifluous voice made him to be feel free from the stressful of the world of his life, and at times he remained into, but if there is a break, then he had come back to the reality. So he says, was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? So here he questions himself. Is he asleep, or he is in the reality? So like that here, the way how John Keats had the touch of the sensuousness and picturesqueness here into that kind of whatever the imagination. So when you look at all these aspects that into this ode to the Nightingale, the way how it draws our attention to how that sensuousness and picturesqueness and the way to understand the figures of speech, like similes and metaphors into its expression. So here, Keats' images are vivid word pictures made of sensuous responses of our senses to the concrete natural objects of the world around. So here, when you have seen that ode to Nightingale with this kind of images, and then that it draws our attention to how the picturesqueness, and here we will see that the other poem, ode on aggression on. So here no, John Keats had tried to see that beauty in all things. Nature with its sensuous appeal exemplifies this. So nature has that kind of abundance, power, spirit, and here the poet has seen that kind of in-depth source of the spirit of the nature, and it's an inspiration which gave birth to many of his odes. So this is what here you can see how the poet had that kind of touch of the spirit of the nature, and to write the odes with this kind of stand to say that how the poetic genius and creativity emerges from the beauty of the nature, spirit and power of the nature. Like that here each and every poem of the romantic age shows the way to know what is pantheism, and how we have to learn from the nature, and how God teaches us through nature. So when you look at all these, then you can understand how the poetic genius and creativity of all the romantic poets with this kind of stand, and the way how the all the odes of Keats and Wordsworth and Shelley shows these kind of human concerns with our reality of life. So here when you look at Wordsworth poem called Tables Turned, in that he says, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes,
So
sir.
if you look at if you look at one of Wordsworth's poems, Tables Turned, he says in that, up, my friend, open your eyes, close your meddling intellects. He always tries to go beyond the nature. If you will go beyond the nature, what happens? you will fail. Your life will be, miserable and hopeless, pessimism, because you are going beyond the nature. So he says, come back to the nature, return to the nature. You should follow the nature, as Alexander Pope said. We have to follow. And the verse says, return to the nature. Up, my friend. Open your eyes. Close your meddling intellects. With your qualifications, you say, what is, you. But if you fail, then what you say? Oh, it is a, failure of life. But here, the romantic poet says that you should do, you should not go beyond the nature, spirit, and you should know that the, God's presence in the nature. So we can see that ode to Nightingale, ode to Skylark, ode to West Wind, ode to Grishanan from this kind of background. So here, the each and every poet of, romantic age shows that how we should, learn from the nature, and how we have to have that kind of human concerns for our freedom of expression, which does not have any kind of conventional, order, or, structure, or any kind of rule. So we should see into this ode to, ode on a Grishanan by, John Keats. Now we will come to another poem by John Keats. Shall we start now this? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here you have seen, P.B. Shelley and, John Keats, and now we'll come to Ode on a Grecian On. So here you can see that, the way how our literature has that kind of background of way back to centuries of Greeks and, Romans, and then, we have, the age of reason with this, odes. Ode on Grecian On is a poem which differs from the other odes of Keats because it culminates in a terse statement that beauty is truth, and taking this aphorism, further still says that this wisdom is all that one needs to know. So here we can see that how, beauty is truth, truth is beauty. Satyame Sundaramu, Sundarame Satyamu. So here in this poem, Keats, as in a romantic poet, how he wants to, explore that kind of whatever the thematic concerns of this poem, with that kind of serious, philosophic, nature of ode to Nightingale, ode to Grishanan, and here ode on melancholy. All these are all with that kind of awareness of death makes life more precious, love more intense, and beauty more poignant. Keats conveys this idea very clearly. So here we'll see that the use of the imagery in this poem and theme, and then how, he had, tried to look at this, Grecian on. It is, with this kind of, poetic, genius and creativity, how, he had this kind of touch of the Greeks. We'll see here ode to a Nightingale and, ode to Grishanan are all, from this kind of, background. We look at the background of this poem. Here Keats recited this in course of a walk with Haydn through the Kilburn meadows in a deep and thrilling chant. It was Haydn who had introduced the youthful poet to the Elgin marbles and roused his interest in Greek sculpture. The ode was published in January 1820. Keats is charmed by the urn and the inscription of scenes from Greek legends of love and heroism, fires his imagination into contemplation of the eternity of art and the transitory nature of human life. So here you can see that how, he had the inspiration from the Greek sculpture. And the ancient Greeks, here are the center of this Hellas, which was the name of the tribe that had settled in Thessaly during prehistoric migrations. Its people were called Hellenes. The word Greek came from Grecia, a name given by Romans to Hellas. Hellenism, however, is derived from the original name Hellas and frequently used in literary criticism, especially of artists such as Milton, Keats, and Swinburne. Hellenism represents a passion for beauty, is contrasted with Hebraism. The influence of the Bible, especially with respect to moral values and discipline, the opposition, however, is more apparent than real. So here, the way how Keats had the influence of Greek art, culture, sculpture, and Hellenism, and here the way how it is making sense of its representation with this kind of on, and how he had that kind of imagination with this kind of Greek sculpture. So when you look at Greek sculpture, in its heritage, and then in literature, you can see how English literature had the touch of these sources to explore that kind of way back to centuries into the verse of Keats reflect this Greek, whatever the sources of the sculpture and all. So when you look at that aesthetic sense of the poem into its whatever the presentation of the actual world around us. So here realism, on the other hand, is the truthful presentation of the actual world around us. So here when you look at the way how we have that kind of infatuation of beauty, when you look at any kind of on any kind of beauty of the nature, and here Keats believed that the truth of imagination was the ultimate truth, and it was also a drive, divine truth. So here you look at that, the power of the truth, and if it is a divine truth, if it is uncorrupted, source, then it shows that kind of reality, realism. On the other hand, is the truthful presentation of the actual world around us. So here, when you look at Keats, art, was his religion. So that you can understand how he wants to, bring to the notice of the reader that through his art that he could control the reality around him. Philosophies change from age to age. It is the life with its essentials that is constant, and Keats is concerned with this crucial aspect of life. So here, life is a life of anyone's, of any age, no matter. But you can see that philosophy of each and every age. But it may change, from age to age, but life will remain as it is. So here, Ode to Grecian is a poem which differs from the other odes of Keats, and it culminates in a terse statement that beauty is truth, truth is beauty. So when you look at all these aspects of this, then you can see how he had tried to express his feelings into this, and you can look at how that ode on Grecian urn asks the urn which is silent, what listened it holds, what listened it dwells with it. So here, when you look at any object which remains in silence, so here the whatever the beauty of the urn raises this question that what listened it holds, what listened dwells with it. So because its silence can express a flowery tale more sweetly than or rhyme. So here you can see that Keats is with this kind of expression that emanates from silence and is sweeter even than poetry cannot be grasped through interrogation. So here he expresses that the helplessness of the poetic genius and the creativity in front of the silence of that on, beauty of the on, and here it may not grasp through interrogation. So this is what here he questions that what legend it holds, what legend dwells with it. Those tease us out of thought as though eternity. So here the poet accepts it for what it is and this big quest. So here through the centuries, Greek sculpture remains like anything. It is with that kind of popularity and historical background. And here, it finds is thought-provoking ideas to have the imagination and to question its, whatever the silence. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipe, play on, not the sensual ear, but more endeared. Pipe to the spirit deities of no tone, fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not live thy song, nor even can those trees be bare. So here, the song of that whatever the urn, and you can see that here he says that he cannot be heard. So is the lover who cannot kiss his beloved, in spite of their love being eternal, just like the pipes that play all the time. So here, on urn, whatever the sculpture was there, and here it he reminds him that how heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard. And here the way how that musical instruments play like anything. So here he says, bold lover, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve, she cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss, forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Here, on that, on the whatever the script Greek sculpture is, with that kind of beauty and the tradition of that Greeks. And he, says that, whatever, the maiden is like the urn itself. So he compares that silence of the urn, with a maiden. Always it is, in her, life of, marriage, initially she is like a on with the silence. And here, the poet, says that the way how its freshness and charm defies time, and it is deathless. So here it is eternal. And he says, a happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu. So here you can see that how Greek sculpture of that urn is bringing that kind of whatever the beauty, as well as mixture of paradoxes, and then conveys dynamic action, and the way how it is soundless on its expression. And here the poet is with this kind of status of mind, that it always with that whatever the unforgettable, and it is deathless, it is forever. So here beauty is truth is beauty. So here Keats always tries to remind that, aware of the fact that the silent on in its frozen moment is dynamic, because it is frozen and can teach us no more out of thought than the world of reality. So here you will see that the world of reality reminds of that owns Greek sculpture. And here the poet, owns up of that Greek sculpture to say beauty is truth, and it is forever, and it is infinity, and it is deathless. And here he says that the some of the unanswered questions, who are these coming to the sacrifice, to what green altar, O mysterious priest, leads it thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks, and with the garlands dressed, what little town by river or sea shore or mountain built with peaceful citadel is emptied of this folk, this pious mourn, and little town, thy streets for evermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can ever return. So here, the way how it is with this kind of rhetorical question, how only one answer: art is seen as something more genuinely and fruitfully immortal. So here you can see that the way how way back to centuries of Greek sculpture and the on Grecian on is with this kind of human passion and human dignity, but preserves them in a poised, motionless order which transcends time or depicts something larger than man. So here, when you look at all these aspects of the poetic genius and creativity, as well as lucid expression, vividness in its whatever the use of the language, are all with this kind of you know whatever the romantic aspirations of that age, to say that romantics aspire for this ideal, the delight that it brings by putting aside at least temporarily the hardships of life, and hence realize that a thing of beauty is joy forever. So here, similarly, whatever we have seen in Skylark, West Wind, and here the O2, Nightingale, and Odan Grishanan, all these are all of similar to understand that romantic poets always tries to uplift the human beings from that kind of nostalgia of the past, and bitterness and pessimism, to live in the presence with the kind of a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Truth is forever, and beauty is truth. Truth is beauty. So here, when you look at all these, then the way how the all these whatever the odes are all from this. And here the second stanza depicts the frustrating paradox where the lovers are helpless to consummate their love. The kiss here symbolizes the consummation, and once consummated, beauty and vigor vanish. So there is nothing to grieve about, since love unconsummated stands eternal. So here, uncorrupted love is eternal. So in the second stanza, he reminds that forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young. So this is what the way how sanctity of sanctorium of the uncorrupted eternal love of this truth and beauty is making sense of that Greek sculpture is forever. Like Keats speaks of heifer being taken to the altar of sacrifice, symbol of the consequences of consummated love, and its destination is death. In fact, the old town is following the same course, and hence the deserted village will ever remain so. So here on that procession of the marriage, and the bride and groom and the people are all following with that kind of musical instruments. And when you look at all that, the way how they are going towards the bridegroom's house, and then the village is with that kind of silence, and it will remain so. It is the lovers who are far away from the scene, and hence the poet pleads, never, never canst thou kiss, where the repetition is significant. Similarly, happy, happy bows, and more happy love, more happy, happy love. These repetitions stress the eternity of spring only when beauty is left alone, and the plea of the poet is for eternity. So here, the beauty of the village remain forever, no matter of people staying or leaving. Here, a uncorrupted beauty is with this kind of sanctity of sanctorium. So here he steps into that kind of images of life, and reminds us that we have only been contemplating a bride or a marble, men and maidens, but the power of the urn is hypnotic. Thou silent form dost tease us out of thought as doth eternity. So here the Greek sculpture always tempt us to have that kind of pleasant nature, and it teaches us what listened you have, what is that the history of yours, ours is forever. Like, so here when the poet is making sense of that thing is silent, and it embodies classic purity of form. Here you can see that it haunts us, it teases us out of thought until we can only contemplate and observe the eternal values which it symbolizes. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. So here he has been trying to remind the Greek sculpture with its teasing nature, and how he questions the legend and the history of that sculpture and silence. And here he has been trying to remind that on is all knowing, for it has the experience of generations. So here towards the tradition to and modernity, from way back to centuries, from where to where no one knows, but here the on is all knowing, for it has the experience of generations. So when you look at an on, an object in our family, how it has the experience of forefathers and our family tree. So like that here one generation wastes its old age, for it has left behind the beauty and youthful spring of life. The woe of man is that, having consummated all his passion, he is left with nothing. It is the urn that takes one to the eternal beauty, the dying, undying spring of life. So here, the way how our life is, lost in thoughts, and it will become nothing, and the urn reminds us that how we have to live. It is the urn that takes one to be eternal beauty, the undying spring of life. What we finally realize and release is the bygone beauty, the spring and the eternal love, and that is all we need to know. It is the urn that reminds us of what we have lost. So here the beauty and the art of the Greek sculpture, through the centuries, teaches each and every generation, and the way how human life lost in its existence, good for nothing, and nothing for our life. Here the poet has been trying to remind that the art is eternal, and beauty is truth, truth is beauty. You should see that the way how is what to Nightingale and Grisham on are all into this kind of whatever the expectations of the beauty is truth, truth is uh, it is not a temporal appeal which fades with the passages of time. Here he idealizes the urn as a moment of immortality by describing the scenes engraved on it with great vividness. So here the picture of that urn teases us that you are fading your life is good for nothing, but as an art, the art stands on its own, that it is eternal and deathless, and it is with that kind of vividness. And here as and when you look at the scenes engraved on urn, and the young girl on the urn will never grow old, the blossoming trees will never experience why winter, and their empty village will never reveal its secret. So here the silence of the urn questioned by the poet, and it never reveals of that young girl, and then the it never grows old, and it teases the human beings that you grow old, but the art and sculpture of the Greeks never grow old, and the young girl remains as it is, years together through the generations, and it has that kind of vividness in its experience and all. It's a great challenge of the art to human beings. So here, when you look at all these, whatever the scenes engraved on it, on urn, and then you can see that Keats has been trying to bring that kind of idealization and actual life with this kind of contrast. So when you look at all these, then we can understand how art is eternal, and how it remains with that kind of vivid greatness. And here, the way how poet he is making sense of that kind of beauty, because it is beauty which gives us truth and makes art appealing. So here, way back to centuries, Greek sculpture remains forever through the generation. It never ever fades. It is with this kind of great vividness, and it is an ambrosia. So when you look at all these, that the way how perishable, imperishable, between the difference between this kind of old and youth. The art of the youth will remain forever, but the youth of the human beings will become old. So here, art always teases the human beings that you may fade your life because of the age, but through the ages of this art will remain forever. The great sculpture of the Greeks will remain forever. So here, the silence of the village and the youth of youth girl, and the way how the beauty and the scenes engraved on urn are all remaining through the generations. So here, imagery is natural and spontaneous product of his poetic sensibility. So we have seen that kind of images are more descriptive than illustrative. So here we have seen that the way how his odes are all with this kind of use of the language and pictures of these objects being described there. So when you look at all these aspects of aesthetics to draw the attention from the human beings, to understand that poetic genius and creativity of and John Keats, from this, way back to centuries of, Greek sculpture, and then the beauty of the nature, and at last he says that beauty is truth, truth is beauty, and art is eternal, and how our life is torn between the past and future, and to live the presence is more important than looking at the past and future. And here we can see that art is through the centuries, no matter of the past and present and future, it is forever eternal to all, and tease our human life without any kind of doubt. So when you look at Keats' contribution to the romantic poetry from this kind of whatever the historical background of Hellenism, and with that kind of optimism, and then you can understand how John Keats and P.B. Shelley have been trying to remind the significant role of the beauty of the nature, as well as the art and culture of that age, to understand the poetic genius and the creativity from this kind of background, to say that how the romantic poets had tried to uplift the human life from gutter to great heights, to have that kind of realization and realities of life. And here the poets had tried to aware the people to know the reality of life, and no matter of the past and the future, one should live in the presence rather than in this kind of confusion status of the material benefits. So when you look at the ode to Skylark, West Wind, ode to Nightingale, Grecian are all from this kind of background, to understand how the age of reason and freedom of expression and individuality is making sense of its resourceful nature of the poetic genius and creativity with the unique status of mind. And each and every poet has been trying to use the subjective as well as objective, and it is from the idealization towards the actuality of our life, as well as to have that kind of philosophy in our human life, as well as to say that poetry is more than philosophy, and it is not only a expression of that kind of spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. It is making sense of the idealization of human life with this kind of ground realities of each and every age. So here we can understand how all these whatever the poems of the 19th century are all making sense of our creativity with this kind of critical analysis of human life with the beauty of the nature. So with this, I conclude all these, whatever the poems, and then we'll see in next class the rest of the other, uh, poems of this unit 2. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah, are you able to understand 4 poems of this class?
Okay, sir. Understand.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So please go through whatever you have the material, so that you will recollect whatever the points were covered in our lecture, and then you can also try to understand from this kind of critical analysis of each and every poem, and how they differ of their poetic genius and creativity with others, and the content use of language, and how they took poetry as a vehicle to express their views among the people, and how they want to elevate the society into great heights of that optimism. And here the way how this 19th century poetry is making sense of the age of reason. Here each and every poet had tried to establish that kind of individuality in human life, to have human concerns on that creativity, and to have the resourceful nature to understand that how poetry is more than philosophy. With this, I wish to conclude the class. So we'll see in next class. Thank you one and all. Is it okay? Hello.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
Sir.
So
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Welcome. So please go through whatever the material is there. Okay. So thank you. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.